When Power of the Elements was first announced for the TCG, we were promised support for an unexpected type of monster. Speculations ran wild for a bit, including those ever hopeful for more Pyro support, but eventually it was confirmed that we'd be getting more support for fish. Was the reveal of the Elden Beast, was fish from the deep beyond. Fish? Don't you mean Ghoti, I hear you say? Well, let me quickly address this archetype's name. You see, Ghoti, or fish, is basically just an old joke about how messed up English pronunciation is. Someone thought it'd be funny to take the F sound from enough's GH, the I sound from women's O, and the sh sound from nation's TI. It makes more sense when you're looking at the visuals I've put on the screen, trust me. Anyway, for once, it's the TCG doing weird puns that won't translate well to Japanese instead of the other way around. Maybe they're getting revenge for the whole frog archetype. But for the sake of not being too confusing during this video, and of course for those who skip around a bit, and also to not mix them up with the actual fish type, I will be calling them Ghoti, even though the whole point of it is that it's pronounced fish. Oh, and as a quick aside, the rest of their monsters are just anagrams for various sea-related words. Have fun figuring those out yourself. Okay, so pronunciation aside, I'm happy with fish being the new type to get support. I've actually messed with fish support quite a lot, be it with sharks or going back even further to my Superancient Deepsea King Coelacanth deck. If you haven't seen that yet, I'll put a little card for you to click, just so you can get a taste of how powerful Coelacanth combos can be. To sum it up, I basically gave my opponent an acid golem, which locks them out of summoning while also burning them every turn, and then back that up with a bunch of negates. In other words, Coelacanth combos let you do basically everything you want. So how does that fit into the Ghoti archetype? Well, being a TCG exclusive, at first glance it's a little bit lackluster. We've only got half of its support, so while it's a decent start, it will need a lot of help to work for now. That's why we're going to be playing it in a Coelacanth Turbo deck. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What does this new archetype do? Well, we'll be using 5 of their cards, starting with their tuners. Shiv and Paces are level 2 fish tuner monsters, who both share 2 of their 3 effects. That is, the next standby phase after they're banished, they summon themselves back, and then, if that happens to be on your opponent's turn, they're allowed to perform a quick effect synchro summon of a fish monster. This is of course designed to summon Ghoti from the deep beyond on your opponent's turn, to trigger its field right banish, or one of their other synchros which we'll get to soon. Where these 2 tuners differ is in their first effect. Paces can banish itself on the field to summon a fish from the hand, which will then trigger its other 2 effects. More importantly, it's a way to get Superancient Deepsea King Coelacanth out of your hand, so because this card has so many searches, drawing Coelacanth is actually good now. So this and Coelacanth together are full combo. But what is that combo? Well, we'll see that in depth, that's not a C pun, later on. But as a part of that combo, you'll summon Shiv. Now, any monster summoned with Coelacanth does have its effects negated, but Shiv has a graveyard effect which bypasses that. It can banish itself to target a fish you control, and give it 500 attack. While I know that doesn't sound too impressive, just imagine it instead says trigger effects number 2 and 3 next turn, and now you'll understand that it's actually quite good, being a reliable way to get the quick effect synchros. So let's have a look at the newly revealed one, Ascan. When synchro summoned, it targets an opponent's card and a fish you control, and banishes both. Then if banished, say by the first effect, it can banish another fish from the graveyard to summon itself back. Targeted banishes are still pretty strong, and the fact that it summons itself back means you'll get to use your other tuner to make Deep Beyond, if necessary. But what really makes this strong is that you'll pretty much always have a Chen Ying on the field at the same time, resulting in another banish on the field and graveyard. Plus, if you banished Ascan, it will chain block the Chen Ying, making it even more deadly. Speaking of chain blocking, the field spell is very subtly designed, which makes it better than it looks at first. While it does of course have that first effect where you search your Ghoti monsters by banishing another fish, as well as having some protection, it actually shines in the graveyard where, upon summoning a fish, you can banish a fish you control to add this back to your hand. Do you see why this is good yet? It's good because both of your synchros are fish, and they trigger their effects on summon. That means that if this is in your graveyard and you make an Ascan or Deep Beyond, you can trigger this after they trigger their effects to get chain-blocked banishers. This means you can dodge a lot of negation thanks to this, resulting in a more difficult to stop field wipe. They also got a new Moray/POTE hybrid, which is somehow a type of card now, and also a level 6 that searches a trap. Right now, none of those cards are straight up bad, but they just don't really fit into the deck very well. We're trying to do everything we can to turbo out a Coelacanth and make a board full of Synchros, so we're just playing the parts of this new archetype that will help them do that. Maybe those other cards will be useful as the next wave of support, so make sure to stick around for when that's released. But for now, let's check out the current version of the deck. Here it is. In its current form, this deck is a glass cannon, and so everything you see is built for getting to and summoning Coelacanth as consistently as possible. But first, let's start with the Ghoti cards we use. These are 2 Shift, 3 Paces, and 3 the most distant deepest depths. We also run 1 very optional Moray of Avarice, which really could be anything else you want to run more of. Shift is at 2 because you can summon it reliably from the deck, while Paces is at 3 because it's actually a pretty good starter. The field spell also searches either of those, essentially being 3 more copies of Paces. Then we run Coelacanth at 3 since we do actually want to draw it. Beautiful Princess is at 3, so Konami had really better hurry up and reprint it. It's another 3 more copies of Paces, or even a lifeless Leaffish if you need it to be. Plus it banishes itself for cost, so it will contribute to the whole having banished fish theme of the deck. Then we have our combo pieces. We run 2 White Moray, Breathis, and Oystermeister for summoning with Coelacanth. You don't necessarily need 2 of each, but having fish in your hand is quite important. Plus you don't want to be unable to do your combos because you drew your one and only copy, so 2 of these is fine. I then run 1 Lifeless Leaffish, which can occasionally help for some of those stranger combos, but mostly can be a good non-tuner level 4 for your combos who also recycle some fish in the graveyard while drawing a card. Then run either 1 or 2 of White Moray or Silent Angler. I think Silent Angler's better, but since I probably used White Moray in some combos, I'm keeping a copy here just to not confuse people. Trust me, people would complain, but as for you, just run 2 Angler. Finally, Summon a Monk is full combo as long as you draw a spell. It's one of the reasons I'm running quite a lot of spells, as well as opting for Dark Rulers instead of hand traps, since they'll be better against the current meta anyway, while helping you discard for cost while going first. You'll see how this card is full combo later on. Next we have 1 for 1, who searches Tuner, Piri-Race Map, which, guess what, searches Tuner, and then 3 extra Foolish Burial, which sends Ice Barrier to search... No, not Tuner, it searches Coelacanth. This does lock you into waters, but you can still do some very good combos while waterlocked, so it seemed worth it to essentially get 3 more copies of Coelacanth. Dark Ruler helps going second, Cool Buy is going to be great in this meta, and Terraforming is a 4th field spell. Was Ice Barrier that I mentioned already? That's the main deck, so let's look at the extra. First off, we run 1 of each of the new Synchro monsters. They're pretty good and, well, this is a Ghoti deck. Then there's the staple pieces of our combo. Bahon, Shenying, Monoceros and Arcathis. You'll be making all of these as part of your main combo that we'll see soon. We then have 2 level 6s, White Aura Dolphin and Stardust Charge Warrior. Stardust is better since it draws you a card, but if you're locked into waters, you'll still need the Dolphin since ending on a level 6 is actually very important. Then we have some optional bosses that are very good while going second. Crystron Quarion Gandrax and White Aura Whale. The Crystron can be a ton of banishers, while the Whale is an alternative monster you could summon even on your opponent's turn to mirror force them on summon, but it really shines in going second and securing an 80k. Then we have some Xyz monsters. Besides Ducaris, which you make with Summon a Monk, they're not made as part of the main combo, but they're great backups if you lose some important combo piece or just need to improvise. Abyss Dweller is a good option if you're short on monster zones for next turn's tuners summoning themselves back, but if you don't need that, you can always just go Bahamut into Toad. Luckily that isn't their main play at all, so even if Toad does get banned, the deck won't really be affected. Finally, Abyss Keeper is technically useful. It's more of a backup play, or maybe even a turn 3 play, but it's pretty good to have as an option, especially since it also banishes. Before we check out some combos, I just want to mention 2 options. White Aura Behemoth is kind of hard to make, but would also be pretty good at 80k'ing, so if you want to run this, you might as well make it with Coral Dragon. Then there's Crossout Designator as a fun option, since it can protect you from hand traps if you adjust your deck accordingly, but could also banish your tuners, and since they only check to see if they are banished next turn, it won't be negating their effects when they try to trigger them. It's a fun option if you have some around, and want to try and jam in a few hand traps for protection. So now it's combo time! But first, if you've been enjoying this video so far, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. With these combos, I'm going to show you various ways of getting a Coelacanth on the field, and then show you what you can do once it's there. The simple option is to start with it in your hand, and then have a way to get to Pisces. We'll get to it with the field spell Banishing Shift, and then normal summon it, but it could also work as Beautiful Princess, Piraeus map, or by just hard drawing it. Banish Pisces to get Coelacanth out, and then discard to summon a Griefus, a Pisces, an Oystermeister, and a Swamp Eel. Deepsea and Griefus make a Bahun, which will gain attack based on how big your opponent's hand is. Then use Bahun to destroy the field spell, trust me. Next make Monoceros and revive Deepsea and get a token. Use that token, the tuner, and the Synchro to make a Cheng Ying. Deepsea now discards again to bring out a level 4 non-tuner and 2 of your remaining level 2 tuners. Lifeless Leafish is the best non-tuner here. The 2 and the 6 make a Charge Warrior for a draw, and the rest make an Archetype for an extra draw. With 2 cards in hand, it will also be a quick effect pop. Banish Shift to boost Archetype and then let it trigger next turn, and then draw yet another card by recycling combo pieces with Leaffish. During your opponent's standby phase, make sure you revive both tuners. When your opponent will have 2 cards on the field and at least 1 in their graveyard, quick Synchro into Ascan. Banish itself and something on the field, but then since you summoned a fish, you can chain block that with the field spell, adding itself back to the hand while banishing Ascan, which also makes Archetype stronger. Then you trigger Cheng Ying for another 2 banishes, which this time is chain blocked by Ascan's trigger to summon itself back. You can then Synchro into Deep Beyond if that board somehow wasn't enough, or if you just wanted to get a bit more attack on the field to 80k next turn if you managed to banish a few monsters. Don't forget that all this was also protected by an Omni Negate and a quick effect destruction. This time you have the Summon a Monk combo. If you summon it, discard a spell to get a Leaffish from the deck. It will send Deepsea and then overlay into Dagares. He revives Deepsea, who discards to bring out the same 4 monsters as last time. This time, when you make a Bahun, destroy your own Dagares. It served its purpose and you need to free up the space. For the rest of the combo, it's all the same, except you get to trigger Leaffish earlier, guaranteeing that you have the right materials for the second Coelacanth summons. Since we draw a field spell later on, we can use it to search something, and also banish Pisces from the graveyard to trigger that next turn. Without a field spell in the graveyard, you won't be able to chain block Ascan's effect, but you will at least still be chain blocking Cheng Ying. Fun fact, even with just this test hand, you'll have 13,000 damage on board by the time it's your turn. Your opponent will need to block 5,000 attacks worth of damage to survive. For this third one, I wanted to show you what happens if you don't start with Coelacanth or Summon a Monk, but have a Foolish Burial Goods. Use it to send Ice Barrier, and then after getting a Pisces out thanks to Tuner, you can banish Ice Barrier to send a Coelacanth and then immediately add it to your hand. You can now get out Coelacanth with Pisces, but you're locked into waters which will change the combo. This time, get out any level 4 non-tuner, a Griefus, a Shift, and a Tuner. Make a Cheng Ying that gets further boosted by Griefus, and then the rest into a Monoceros. That will revive Coelacanth. The Leaffish we discarded draws a card, and then we discard to get a Schiff, a Grethus, and an Oyster. Make an Archetype and a Dolphin instead of a Charge Warrior since we're waterlocked. The Oyster makes a token, but we don't need it, so if we have Moria of Avarice or something, we can delete it to draw some cards. If you hadn't removed the token, you'd just get one tuner back, but Ascan is good enough anyway. You'll then be able to do the usual banishing and summoning, but this time you'll have a Coelacanth on the field, so if anything tries to target it, you could tribute the Oyster token or another tuner to negate and destroy it. Anyway, that's all for the Ghoti replays, since it's all some variant of trying to do those combos. However, as a bonus, since people are probably going to be paying more attention to Coelacanth combos thanks to this archetype, I've got a little treat for you, a Coelacanth FTK. If you want the decklist for this, I'll have it on my Patreon, so go give that a look. Anyway, sit back and enjoy. So that's the deck. Are you going to pick them up now, or will you wait for their second wave of support? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. Special thanks to my tier 3 patron, Distran, as well as my tier 2 patrons Jason Murat and Violet Rain. Thanks for watching!